Your passion behind automation. I mean, to have a title like this, Chief Automation Officer, where does that passion come from, and how have you seen automation and the technology behind it evolve throughout your career as well?
Yeah, it's a story of right place, right time, I guess, and the advancement of of automation in where our supply chain has gone through a mega acceleration in the last decade, and this has been driven by a number of mega or overarching trends. We're essentially playing automation catch up in supply chain.
Yeah.
That's a positive and a negative. On the negative, there has been so much that's been done manually, and still today, the vast majority of warehouses are still very manual. But we are in an advantageous position because we're leveraging technologies that have been developed and matured in other industries and therefore carry less risk. I'll give one example. At GXO, we implemented a solution that was originally designed for aerospace. We implemented in the operations for a consumer electronics customer in a very short space of time. We were able to get to significant efficiencies with a almost negligible R&D life cycle. And so one of the reasons I'm really passionate
Wow.
about automation in this industry is helping to close a major gap with respect to the availability of productivity and labor. And there's always concerns. It always comes up about automation and robots potentially replacing people in the workplace. But from my perspective, it's actually the opposite, where automation is helping solve a significant global problem for the consistently increasing need for more productivity. Grace, global unemployment has been hovering below 5% for nearly 2 years, and the workforce continues to shrink, which was hastened by the pandemic. That's well documented. And these problems aren't going away, and automation is a primary lever to address them at scale and for the long term. So, when I think about the journey we're on for supply chain industry as a whole, my deepest passion is it's not just about solving problems of today. I love solving problems. You said use the word fun. I have a lot of fun in our warehouses, working with
Yeah.
our team side by side, looking at what's getting in their way and helping remove those obstacles. But my deeper passion is really about building new technologies that will sustain the future of global supply chain.
For you, what are some of the most simple ways that logistics companies or even shippers looking at their warehousing operations today could look to automate some of those processes? Where are like easy wins for you when you bring on a new customer?
Sure. So I'm going to address the question from an approach perspective, because
Sure.
the question of how and what to automate can seem daunting and very complicated.
Yeah.
And so the way that I think about this question and approach, what should be automated, I think we should revert to tried and proven approaches to make what seems complicated as simple as possible. And so the way that I think about this and answer the question is through a standard operational excellence approach, right? Getting back to my point earlier about automation just being another lever in the CI toolbox. Automation trends in supply chain may be highly dynamic and new, but lean-based problem solving is not. And so for
Ah.
me, the simplest way for companies to go about automation transformation is to start exactly the same way as they would with any structured approach for problem solving, by defining the business problems, requirements, and prioritizing what needs to be solved for. So I'll give some examples. Companies may need to scale volume capacity based on seasonality, or a different scenario, stand up omni-channel capabilities close to customers, or reduce cycle time from order to fulfillment. I could keep going on the example, but the point is that it's critically important for companies to start with the problems and business requirements and strategy, and then evaluate what technology is best suited to solve those problems. The key point here for me is approaching automation through the lens of operational excellence and lean-based problem solving, and not fall into the trap of chasing the latest tech hype. Because whatever the
Yes.
latest tech hype today is not going to be that in the very near future. We see that with the acceleration of developments in the space. But there's good news. There's good news here is that there are now an advanced stage of maturation in various categories of what I'm going to call modular automation. So as opposed to large scale, I think of modular automation where there are many types of tech that can be deployed to solve a vast array of operational problems, some of which I mentioned, and in a brownfield context. So examples are wearable technology, smart scanners, collaborative robots, RFID, vision-capable tech. And at GXO, we're deploying these kinds of modular retrofits on a regular basis as we accelerate the automation of our legacy manual operations, which is a key part of our strategy to build the supply chain of the future. And these modular solutions are now very predictable, with short implementation times, fast return on investment, and really very limited risk of operational disruption, which is a claim I couldn't make as recently as 2 to 3 years ago.
Is it best to figure out how you want to solve maybe the situation or the problem at hand prior to making the investment in the technology that would do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes, Grace, I get into a little bit of an awkward conversation when having introductory conversations with customers. So for the first time I meet a customer, if they fall into this trap, it can be a little awkward because you don't want to come out right in the introduction and say, well, I don't think you should approach it in that manner. But I've had a number of examples within the last 12 to 24 months where I've quite delicately guided the conversation with a customer who exactly started off with, I've looked at the landscape and I'm going to go ahead with X technology. And the way that I try to maneuver the conversation, again, quite delicately, is saying, can we start off more with the business strategy and the problems you're looking to solve in your business requirements? And then we can look at the myriad of solutions offerings that are available and see which is the most suitable. In one instance, the gentleman that we started this conversation and we went through this journey together, we're implementing a solution that is completely different than what he started off in the conversation. So absolutely, to your question, I think it's very important to start off with, from a business requirements, a strategy, and a process perspective, how we need to solve the problem, and then looking at which is the best technology to suit that need.
And a lot of the work that you do so far, especially at GXO Logistics, what is something maybe you're most proud of automating so far during your time there?
Yeah, so what I get excited about is when we implement solutions that do two things. The first is set up our team for success and make their jobs safer and easier to perform. And then secondly, bring value to our customers. So that's essentially how I look at my job description and my mandate. Make the job easier for the team and bring value to our customers. And so I'll give a couple of examples that bring immense pride in terms of achieving these two outcomes. The first is where we completely automated the packing process for a sports apparel retailer, where we're able to improve the capacity of the site by over 20%. And through this, we were able to reassign the warehouse associates to be able to perform some value-added projects for the customer that couldn't be automated. They were very short-term, very sporadic, and a specific need. And we would not have been able to offer that project and be in a position to do that without the automation due to both space and throughput capacity constraints in that warehouse. And another example is where we implemented an AI solution in a site that improved the picking path optimization by, it was almost 15%, it was like 14.5%. And so just think about that transformation and the impact on those individuals. And this is where I get really jazzed and excited about it, because this is where automation, it's literally having a positive impact on people's lives. So prior to the AI solution, the way that the process would work is that at the beginning of the shift, the warehouse associate would be given a list of tasks for picking and would literally be required to go out and figure it out for themselves on what the best way that they could figure out to go and perform those pick activities. After the AI solution was in place, the optimized route was presented to the employee at the start of the shift. And so the amount of time and the efficiency and the frustration is just significantly reduced. And we see these examples over and over again where GXO is using automation to remove bottlenecks for our associates and of course, bring tremendous value to our customers.
Can you tell us some of the partners that are helping GXO power those warehouses today?
So Grace, as far as our partners go, tongue in cheek, the ones we partner with are all of them. And so what I mean by that is we have an exhaustive repository of global vendors that we work with. And as far as what solutions they offer, the way that we break it down is we track the solution offerings by the warehouse process that they're designed to address. So think of our matrix broken down by inbound, picking, packing, sorting, return, security. There's 12 different categories of processes that we look at. And then the vendors that provide solutions geared to improving efficiencies across those processes. And here's the key point, and why I started off by making the somewhat lighthearted comment about all of them. Our position in the market is to not have a preferred supplier position. We have a certification program for suppliers, but it's not to establish a single or even 2 or 3 suppliers, because different solutions are relevant to different problems at a very granular level. And we need to be agnostic on our suppliers when we're having discussions with our customers on what their needs are. And so the question of which suppliers we work with is dictated by our customers' needs, and it's not a subjective preference or predefined preference. And the nature of the suppliers is very much how they go about the solutions and the proven and mature nature of their technologies and how they've gone through our certification program. But we literally have hundreds of vendors in our repository that we're working with, and not just from a perspective of existing and mature technologies. We cast our net as wide as we possibly can in terms of understanding what solutions are emerging, what are we going to be trialing and helping, providing and giving feedback to those vendors through the trials of the new technologies. We have over 30 trials in play today, and for sure we'll have a number of those that we'll get through to validation. We'll be able to deploy those solutions, and those will be the mature solutions in the not too distant future.
What challenges come with automating warehouses in particular, and how do you work with shippers to overcome those challenges as well?
Yeah, there are a few challenges. There are quite a few, to be honest. I'll touch on what I see as some of the major aspects of those challenges. The first is change management, because the level of discipline and structure that's required in an automated warehouse setting is significantly different than in a manual. Manual warehouse operations can be more forgiving and more unstructured, and that's okay. But because of just the huge interdependency of all of the components of the warehouse ecosystem, when we're talking about robots interacting with IT, multiple layers of IT, and of course warehouse workers, and the solution and the challenge to get all of those components of the solution to be able to work together is a really huge challenge. And so the best way to overcome that challenge of the complex interdependency and change management is through the implementation and deployment methodology to be very disciplined and very structured in terms of defining what are the business requirements that the solution needs to deliver, and then testing multiple layers of testing against those requirements. So I'll do one more click down on what I'm talking about.
Yeah, please.
A mistake that often gets made is, the robots are moving about. The workers can put different products, different SKUs on a robot, and the robot can go from point A to B as intended. But can the business support the needs of the customer and the volume, and can the automation and the solution respond to the ever-changing needs of the volume as it materializes? one of the challenges on a day-to-day basis is whatever the forecast and the plan is that's decided in a pre-ship planning meeting, that plan gets changed by the first hour of the day as volume comes in a very different manner. So that challenge around the solution needing to be very agile and responding to the volume as it materializes, being very different to what was planned and forecasted is a key part of that. And the last challenge I'll touch on is a balance that we grapple with daily, and that's being current on cutting edge tech, but not exposing the business to unnecessary risk associated with early stage adoption. And so the way that we manage that is we consider our global network of sites as really an extensive R&D lab. And the R&D that we do is unique. It's different than traditional engineering, prototyping, and development. Our R&D is we're trialing and experimenting for operational readiness and relevance. And we're iterating and giving feedback to vendors all the time. The relevance of automation and where it will be table stakes is in removing waste and smoothing out warehouse processes and the end-to-end flows to simplify job tasks and bring value to customers. If companies don't do that, there won't be a table upon which they can stake anything. That's got to be the basis for their transformation, their automation transformation. But then getting more specifically to your question from a technology perspective, the rapid rate of progress is only accelerating. And so technologies that are considered cutting edge today, or maybe even aren't production ready, will be table stakes in the future. I have no doubt about it. We've seen it over the course of the last 5 to 7 years. I mentioned right at the beginning of the call about the mega acceleration. Technologies that were considered cutting edge 5, 6 years ago that companies, especially in retail omnichannel, were clamoring to implement are now past mature, and new technologies have overtaken those that were highly sought after just 5 to 6 years ago. And so, for example, humanoids, the use of AI for warehouse optimization, highly integrated end-to-end pick-pack ship solutions. These are the type of offerings that aren't mature yet, that they're not production or commercial ready, but as sure as anything, these are all technologies that will be table stakes in the future. Grace, it's a rather unique and unusual but positive situation that we're in. You can't tell the future, but in this situation, you can be very predictive in terms of these trends. And that one thing's for sure, the automation is going to continue to mature. The relevance of automation to organizations is only going to continue. And if companies aren't thinking about that 5 to 10 year roadmap today, they're not going to be able to catch up when an inflection point hits within the next, I think it's, 2, 3, 4 years out, where the relevance of automation it's going to be impossible to catch up on. It reminds me of when I joined Target, 7 or 8 years ago, and at that time, the big push was around omnichannel, and I remember very clearly the script was that if companies in retail didn't have an omnichannel strategy, they were going to fall by the wayside and be overtaken by their competitors, and we saw it happen. We saw it happen with a number of retailers in the US and globally that weren't able to keep up in terms of omnichannel and that strategy. And I see the same today with automation. Companies need to be thinking about their automation, their outsourcing strategy, where they're going to look to outsourcing experts like GXO to help alleviate and take some of that transformation pressure off. And if they don't do that, it's going to be too late to catch up 2-3 years from now. There are a number of them. We have trials going on in some of the categories that I mentioned. So humanoids is one. I see tremendous relevance of this category in the future, but we're not at commercial or production readiness quite yet. We're not talking about a massive gap. We're doing a number of trials with different providers. We're very public about those trials. I'm very proud of them, that we are engaged in collaborating with the vendors. So that's one. The second category where there's a tremendous opportunity, but we're still very early stage, is in the combination and the overlay of AI with robotics. So we're looking now at a number of different vendors, and one of the areas that I get excited about is when vendors come to us with very specific problems they're helping to solve. Some vendors are more end-to-end, but I get excited about very specific problems. So I'll give one example. We're working with a company for repalletization and relabeling. It doesn't sound particularly sexy and widespread, but if you think about our warehouse context with over 900 warehouses, in the vast majority of them, and it's north of 80%, the way that we receive product through the trailers and inbound is very different to how we optimize and put it away for storage. So the vast amount of the time we have to either repalletize, or it comes in floor loaded and we have to palletize it in the first instance. Having an intelligent robotic solution or robotic arm that learns and continues to improve how it repalletizes and constructs those pallets, it is going to be a tremendous valuable use case for us. We just started this pilot. It's exciting. I've stood beside the robot and watched the pace at which it works. And yeah, if this vendor is able to deliver on the promise, the benefit is going to be huge. The good thing about where we're at with GXO is we've been on a digital transformation for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And our very specific strategic position with respect to automation has positioned us to be the leaders in the field, and we're truly shaping the industry. My focus for this year, which is year 5 of our strategy, there are 4 imperatives. Number one, continue the automation conversion of our legacy manual network, which is already very far along. Continue to build on the global best practices and deploy those across our regions. The third one is accelerate our R&D work that I've spoken about repeatedly on this calls. And then the fourth one, and this is something that literally every organization needs to have this as part of their digital transformation, is a very tight partnership between operations, automation, and IT in building out the global data foundation, because that's integral to GXO, but any company's ability to scale and meet ever-changing needs. So to wrap up, Grace, I'm going to come back to this imminent inflection point. GXO has been intentionally building our automation position for the last 5 years, and we've been preparing for what we know is coming. And my advice to any supply chain or ops leader is to make sure that they are positioning their companies today for the automation challenges and opportunities that are not in the distant future, that they're on our doorstep.